Everybody, welcome to Woodworking Wisdom. My name's Colwin, and today we are looking at spinning tops, but not any ordinary spinning tops. This is going to be a spinning top that I saw down in Spain, and I think I showed you a picture a few weeks ago after my return from all that wonderful pieces that were on display there. And the spinning top that we're about to make is one of those. So what it is, by the way, we have Steph on camera, so she's asking questions and doing all the flicking of the cameras for us. But if we can just have a look at that one, Steph, show you what it is. So it's, I want to say it's a two-piece, but it's made up of 1, 2, 3 pieces. And then we're on the pull cord. We're going to add a further piece. We're going to add something to pull the cord with. So something like that. So there's actually 4 pieces in there. But look, this is a chance for us to use all of our texturing tools, texturing techniques, decorating, elf, all those sorts of things. And we're also going to use the CHROMA die pens as well. I really have taken to these. This is the sort of project that it really, really lends itself to. So we're just going to have a play. Proper old-fashioned wooden toy, this one. Now, this is not one of those fisherman's tales where I make a fishing lure and then never use it, so you don't know that it works. When we finish, we are going to give it a run through just to make sure. Okay, so this is one I made yesterday just to show you. We're going to play with this one and make sure it actually spins. Yeah, I know it does because myself, Ben and Steph have been playing with it this morning and it spins perfectly. So
I think that depends on the user though,
because
I'm not very good at it.
So let's get to start with. Now I'm going to give you dimensions as we go because I was sort of one finger in the air when I was sort of working this out. So it seemed to work and seems to look right. But I can see where you might get it wrong. So let's have a look at this. What I've got, first of all, piece of timber, which is around about, so it's a 38 mil across, so what's that, 1.5 by, we're 170 long, which is about 6 3/4. I've got 2 holes drilled all the way through this piece. So we've got an 11 mil hole. Looks a bit raggedy, but it won't be in a minute. 11 mil hole here, all the way through. And then on this side, we've got a 13 mil hole all the way through. And I've done that center point to outside edge. If we're talking millimeters, it's around about 33 mil. And if we're talking imperial in inches, then we're just over the 1.25 inches. Okay, so that gives you an idea of where we're starting with this. I want to drill the holes first because you know what it's like if you've turned it around and then try and drill the holes, you can have issues with breakout and all those sorts of things. So I wanted to do that first so it's as clean as possible. We can then tidy up the hole with abrasive when we finish. But that's where we are, okay? So this is the shape we've got to make. I've got the area that I'm going to work on, the textured area, closer to the headstock. And we're driving this piece with a ring friction drive and a ring tailstock center. So we'll do the handle first. So that just means going all the way through the basic hand tools. We're going to get the skew out in a minute. We're going to get the rough and gouge out in a minute. Don't forget, by the way, while we're talking skews, rough and gouge, because there's been a few questions about spindle turning recently. Don't forget, next week, myself and Ben are doing a live Q&A session. Steph, remind me of the day that's happening. Tuesday, yes. Tuesday. So on the Tuesday. Now, that's going to be a live Q&A session. So come loaded with questions. But if a few of you can just give us a few questions to set the whole day up. Now, I will have the lathe with spindle tools because we were looking at skew chisels the other day. Questions were being asked about that. So we're going to do a bit of a skew demo and we can then field questions that encourages. And then Ben's going to have things like the tool mech, the scroll saw, all those sorts of things out ready so we can ask sharpening questions, scroll saw questions, biography questions. So it should be a good session, hopefully. We just need some questions to start us off, that's all.
Yeah, we want to keep them busy because it's Colwin's last live before he goes on his American tour. So we want to make him work for it.
Before I get really busy.
Exactly. Yeah. Give you a warm-up for what's to come.
Right then, so let's start nice and quick, about 1,800 to 2,000 revs. And your choice, really. You can start with a rough and gouge or you can start with the skew chisel. Let me just show you a bit of both. So if we start with a skew, in fact, no, let me start with a rough and gouge, only because the tool rest is in a low position. Rough and gouge, gentle drags back and forward. This isn't a surprise to you. You know how to use a rough and gouge, most of you. Handle a little bit lower than the cutting edge, tool rest below center. If you want to use a skew chisel, then all we have to do is raise the tool rest up a little bit. I'll close the gap I just made. Make sure nothing's touching the tool rest. And then we're going to run back and forward. So we're going to run forward and back. And this is a roughing cut with a skew chisel, forward and back. And we can do it on this sort of size of projects. It's not too much of an issue. I'm going to keep this a little bit thicker now. Just make sure that we're not going too thin for our holes. There's only a certain amount of material you can take out here before it gets a little bit weak. So we're going to stop about there. Well, I'll take a couple more cuts, but then we're almost there. That's about where we want to be. There we are. Right, I'll start the shaping of this now. So if we grab the one that I've already made up, this is where we want to end up. Look, we're going to make a couple of those lovely black lines with the with a wedge in a minute. So let's mark out. You don't have to be precise with this sort of a project. It's really nice. I can mess around with it. Well, I'll put a couple of lines in there. That's about the basis. So let's go a little bit lower, a little bit closer with the tool rest. Speed is still the same at 1800. Just going to start slicing some of that end grain away. I don't want to have to chase away a hole that the tailstock has left. There we are. That's going to be one end. Let's roll into that. And then we'll do the same on the other end. So we're just creating a couple of little beads. And you can do this with the beading and parting tool. You can do it with your bowl gouge. You can do it with your spindle gouge. You can do it with whatever you want to, really. Let's have a V cut in here. We're going to put a little burn line, and we're going to put the burn line in with a wedge. And I am going to speed through this a little bit. So you might need to, if you're making your own, you might need to just rewind the stream just to pick up, because there's quite a lot to do. As well as doing this handle, we've got the top base to do. So look, we're going to put a nice little black line in with a wedge. This is wedge of lime. And we're just going to hold that in there. Of course, you can use a wire if you want to. There we are. A couple of little burn lines in there. Right, let's think about the back end. So if we look at what we've got here, we've got a lot of decorating. So I'll get the shape done first, and then we can put the decoration in. First question I think we've got coming through.
So a couple of people have put some questions in for next Tuesday, which I've made note of.
Excellent.
They've asked for an extra camera angle on Tuesday next week to show the angle you hold the tools.
We had, a few months back, we had a stream where I was using the skew and we were doing spindle work, and we had the GoPro set up. And that's what we want to do this time, is get that, for that close-up tool technique, is get that GoPro back in there. So yeah, absolutely, we do it. We're only using 3 cameras today, but we've got that full slot to fill.
Yes, I've made a note of that. And somebody has asked, cutting about 1/3 up on the skew blade.
Yep, so it 1/3 to halfway, really. We go to the overhead there, Steph. So the bottom of the skew, when you're planing cuts, traditionally will be the heel, so the shorter of the two tips. So if we have halfway point there, 1/3 point there. Some people prefer this bottom third. Some people are happy with the bottom half. I would say if you're beginning, stick with the bottom third. As you get more comfortable, you can creep your way slightly up toward the halfway point. We try and avoid the heel only because the heel doesn't throw away the shavings. But if you can keep onto that area there when you're planing, you'll get a much better finish, as well as the bevel rubbing, which is hugely important. because without the bevel rubbing, the cutting edge has no limitation. It can just sink as far as it wants to into the timber. And that's the start of either a bad cut or a catch. So keep the bevel rubbing. Even start with the bevel rubbing and then lift into the cut gently. Yes, Steph.
Perfect. And Frederick Day has asked, will there be an advanced information on your schedule for America?
There's going to be a semi-advance. Yeah, we're going to be working 2 to 3 weeks ahead, just so I know that the schedule isn't going to be broken in any way. So our first one is, well, one of the most important ones for me, just to make sure I get the tech working right, is going to be at Nick Agar Studios. So that's in Brooklyn, in Georgia. We're actually got a course running at that time, but we're going to do a demo for the people on the course. Stream live to you at the same time. Then hopefully the week after that, I want to do something based around the AAW. It won't be live. That will probably be a recorded one. But the week after, fingers crossed, will be live. That'll be from Gatlinburg, from Aramont in Gatlinburg. And I hope to drag in some of the regulars to that one, Bob.
That's daunting. We will be updating that information on the blog, on our knowledge blog as well. We've had a question here from Edenage 2000. What is your 406 plugged into? I am putting mine on legs soon for a workshop refit, and I didn't realise that the power cord from the inverter was only about 1.5 meters in length.
What is it plugged into? Well, it's there. Literally, you can see where I've plugged into. So for us, a regular 3-pin, normal 13 amp socket. If you go to the bigger machine, it's bigger brother or bigger sister, then it's a 16 amp. But we're just into regular 3-pin.
You wouldn't plug it into an extension lead?
If needs be, yeah, if needs be. Usual things, make sure the extension lead is fully wound out, all those sorts of things. So just go for a short extension and maybe just a single socket on it if you're going to do that. Yeah.
Perfect. Bob said he can't wait. And Ward Wilson's asked if you're going to be out the west.
So west, yeah. I'm going to be as far west as Vegas. So we're going to go to see Jimmy over in Vegas, and then we're going to be cutting back again down towards Tallahassee is where we're going to end up before we go back home again. So we're cutting up through the top, down through Colorado, down into Nevada, so Utah, Nevada, Arizona, then back to back along the bottom. My geography will be better when I come back, obviously, but down through New Mexico, down into Tallahassee. So yeah. It's a long old drive, so big like I shape over the top and then back across the bottom.
All Perfect. Right. That's it for now. But Excellent. Anybody for questions next week, keep them coming in, and I'm making a note of them all. Thank you. Yeah,
the only reason I'm nervous about giving out the schedule is because of that. Just it might get broken, so we're like I say 2 to 3 weeks in advance. There we are. So we're just going to do that finishing cut. That is the bottom third that we're working on there. The only reason I've done that is so that top section is unbroken, so that part of that is going to be a high spot of that that curve. So we don't want a rough section to the high spot, otherwise it means flattening the top off. So what are we going to do now? We're going to creep into this sort of shape. So I'm going to work on the neck first. High spot's going to be roughly there, look. So I need a gouge. So it's up to you. You can use a bowl gouge, you can use a spindle gouge. For this, entirely your preference. So let's go with the bowl gouge first. I haven't mentioned the timber yet. We're actually using lime. I'm using lime just because of its color, really. It's nice and pale, so it's going to take to any color that I introduce to it better. There we are. Just rough that shape away. And we're blending with the skew just to clean the cut away. There we go. Right then, so we're going to come around the back. So I'll just give myself a little bit of space to work. So we want to come away from that center. Let's do a little bead in there, look, so a little bit of detail. You didn't see that. There we are. So we got a little bead running back, and now we're going to go in with the spindle gouge just to do a reverse. And we got a lot of comments now, Steph, after that little catch, that little digging, or did no one see it?
No, it doesn't look like anybody saw it.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, no, here we go. We're coming in now. A professional catch. Yeah, no, they definitely saw it.
Hey?
They definitely saw it. So Martin's asking a question regarding the fact that you're using lime. He's been told previously that it's not good for turning because it's too soft.
Oh, no, it's lovely for turning. Yeah, no, love it. Really, so pretty much all of this, I won't say all of them, but a lot of the smokers and a lot of the German nutcrackers I make are made out of lime because it's traditional timber used for those projects. It turns beautifully. It's a lovely crisp finish. It is quite soft though, so if you want to get high definition in it, say for instance you're trying to cut a thread, yeah, it is the wrong timber to use. But for this sort of thing, you'll see it holds good form. I'm going to use a little round nose scraper to give myself just a little curve there. You'll see what I'm doing with this in a minute. I'm going to just pop the dust extractor on, and I'm going to do a little bit of sanding. So I don't need to start very coarse because it's finished so well, that timber. So I go 150, 240, 400 should do. I'm not worried about an immaculate finish. We're going to cover most of the finish up, if I'm honest. So dust extractor. Oh, before I do, yes, Steph.
Yes, sorry. There are a few more comments about the catch with the Colwin Way skew chisel, asking if it's the tool or the user.
The user. Definitely the user.
But yeah, I mean, they're quite happy that it happened with the skew chisel and nothing else, to be honest, in the chat today.
Next week, I'll show you why it happens, and we'll create a few more of those. There
are a few people saying it's still on the lathe, so it wasn't that bad a catch. What can you even class it as a catch? And we've got a question here that is the small hollow dent at the end also possible with a skew, or is it just easier with other tools?
You can do that with a skew, absolutely. I would go smaller skew than the one I had. It gets a little bit big and in the way for those smaller bits of detail. So I'd probably go for the smaller one. Something like that sort of size would be far better. But if you're talking easier to start with, it's easier with a spindle or a bowl gouge to start with, until you get used to the skew. Then it's just another extension of that particular tool. I didn't make it look particularly easy there, but it is. I'm not going to say how often we get catches with skews because we practice a lot. But it even happens to the best of us. Well, I don't know about that. I've watched a lot of people that are really, really, really good with this skew, and it's probably because they'll only put their perfect work out, but you don't see it often enough, and it's good to see it from people that do and use the tools every day, because I find certainly you go to woodworking shows or see demonstrators, it's quite easy to get a little bit frustrated, thinking, oh, I'm never going to get this right. So when one makes a bit of a mistake, it's quite reassuring. Everybody does it. They may not admit to it, but everybody does it. This is the 150 grit. What I would say though, when it does happen, is pick it up and carry on. Don't put that tool down and never use it. There we are. So that's 150, 240. Just having an occasional glance at the clock just to make sure I'm not massively running over with this project. You're going to take your time. You don't want to rush. There we are. So then let's go to a 400. There we are. Now let me show you what that finish looks like at the moment. So if I was just putting a clear finish on that, I'd want to spend a lot more time, and I want to perfect some of these lines. So in here, for instance, in here where that actually is the tip from the skew. I don't know whether the camera can pick that up, but we're going to make that a feature in a minute. We're going to pretend it's supposed to be there, or we'll make it supposed to be there. Just very quickly, there's a little bit of burr in these drill holes. I'm just going to try and clean that out a little bit. Whilst I'm doing that, I'll answer a couple of questions from Steph.
So we've had a question here. What speed are you running? Are you sanding at?
Same as we were turning, so that's 1800, well, 18 and a half actually. And
I'm pleased to say that Maria's watching today.
Hey, Maria.
It's nice to have you back.
Excellent. It's 400. Here we go. Right then, let's have some fun. Let's do some texturing. So that little line, which is a mistake down there, I'm just going to make sure it's not a mistake. Let's do a couple more here. And let's go for our first texturing tool, which will be the decorating. Now, if I just turn the laser speed down, I'm at 1400 there. I'm going to use the side of the round cutter, and I'm going to go in that little concave that I've created. Show you that before we move on. So they're lovely little serrations coming from there. Hoping that cameras can see that. All right. Right. What should we do now? Let's have a go with one of these. So I'll do some dots first. So I'm going to hold this up fairly upright. Swirls maybe. Doesn't like that as much. I can feel it sort of chunking a little bit, but that's all right. That's worked. We're good. You can't really see a huge amount at the moment, but when I come to put our color on in a minute, you'll see it all jump out. Now that one was a fairly fine tooth there. This is a slightly more open one, so we'll just do something with that. Let's do. Yeah, that's nice. I like that. That's fine. So before we go any further, I'm just going to use the wire brush there just to take out any of that soft fibrous material. So a little brass brush. And we're going to pick this out with liming wax, and then we'll add color after that. Yes, Steph.
Question for myself, really. When you're using the decorators, do you have to keep them in the fixed position, or can you move them up the project?
If you move them whilst you're turning, it's quite difficult to keep in the same track. If you're going to do that, start nice and slow, almost like a thread chasing tool, and move gently so it's moving in the same sort of plane.
Yeah.
If you move it in irregular movements, you just tear out the grain, so you don't get that nice even pattern. So I try to stay as still as I can. All right. But look, I don't know if you can see that. A little bit of sanding just to make sure. Now we're going to add a little bit of that liming wax. You don't have to. You can use anything you want to. Remember, not so many weeks ago, we were doing the Viking Sunset Bowl, and instead of using a liming wax that would fill in the grain, we were using the CHROMA gilt, which would pick out the high spots. This is very different. They work in completely different ways. They're different products altogether. Here we're picking out the low spots. CHROMA gilt, we're picking out the high spots. So what I want to do is pick out the lows and then embellish afterwards with the dye pens. So again, we're going to look at the high spots as putting the colour on. Yes, Steph.
Thank you. We've got a question here. Do you get left movement catches using the second texturing tool? I purchased the micro tool for the Axminster handle recently, and it is jumping about a bit for me. What do I need to change this?
I don't know what's happening there. Then I would try different in the speed. Get the tool rest nice and close, but make sure you still got plenty of movement, and put some waste timber in and just experiment. Start off with the cutter, the star wheel upright first of all. So get that going, get those little dots moving. Then sort of bring the handle round and start to get some movements with the corner of the wheel, and then start tilting. See which is working best for you. I'm not quite sure why it would be jumping, but again, start something small as well. Don't go too big to start you off. All right. There we are. So liming wax. This is white wax. Okay, so we're going to fill the low spots. I only want to go in those areas. I'm deliberately quite generous with it. I want to make sure it goes in deep. Pick out all those spots. Now, one thing I wanted to get, if I'm honest, I completely forgot before this stream, is I wanted some cloth instead of tissue. Tissue's not great for this. If you're going to use cloth, so I like cotton cloth, just tear it up into small pieces. Don't have a big load of rag in your hand that could potentially drag your hand into the turning. Just small pieces of cloth. Because the thing is with cloth above rag is above tissue is tissue will break down. And when we've got a fairly rough surface in this textured surface, we don't want that. We want the cloth to stay in one piece. I'll show you what I mean in a minute as we start taking this off. Ideally, we want to leave this to dry. Once I've done this, there we are. Let's get rid of that. So that's what's happening. It's tearing the cloth up, and it's going to drag it into all those little bits there. Don't want that to happen. So, like I say, little bits of cloth. Just using some web racks here. This web racks doesn't have an abrasive on it. It's just a carrier. But it's a slightly textured surface. Just going to help take off some of that excess. There we are. So you can see how it's picked out that color really, really nicely. Now, what I can do next, we can add let's put another couple of cuts in. We've already put some grooves in there nicely. So let's go in, not a couple of cuts, but we put the grooves in so we can put a couple of burn marks in. So a nice bit of pressure. You can see the smoke come up. There we go. A little bit of clean tissue there. Lay speed nice and slow. So yes, Steph, some questions.
Yes. So firstly, does the liming wax cover catches?
Does it cover catches?
Yeah.
It doesn't cover up catches. It highlights your catches. So it creates nice little texturing marks instead of catches.
And Maria suggested, why not use a small brush?
For
I'm not
for
sure.
dabbing in, absolutely, yeah, brilliant. No problem at all there.
And also, somebody said they haven't seen the European lime in the US. Would sycamore be a good alternative?
In the US, yes, sycamore, hard maple will be good because it's hard. Basswood, I think, is the equivalent of lime in the US. Tulip, those sorts of things. So yeah, pale, not too soft. Okay, so not balsa wood soft, but that textures really well. Sycamore textures really well. Maple does as well. So yeah, anything like that, anything that's pale really. Now there's my pot of pens. Okay, so pot of pens. I'm not even going to look at the color. I'm just going to drag the first one out. In fact, we'll do that with all of them, and we're just going to, without looking at the color. Oh, there we go. We've got an orange. So what I'm going to do, we've got a lot of texture, so let's just drag over some of that texture. Won't even look at the colors again. And one more, we're not going to go too crazy this afternoon. See what we got. There we are. That's picking out those colors beautifully. All right. Now, like I say, we could go, you know, do even more if you want to. You got the time, you can experiment and really play. This one's a little bit more vibrant here, but that's giving us a really nice. I think we need a bit of color right on the end because that's a little bit bare there. Go for it, Steph.
So somebody's asked here, did you say what the pens are called?
I will show you them.
And somebody else is asking, would Sharpies work?
I guess they would. Yeah, go somewhere with a big nib. You know, you look at the size of that nib on there. You've got so many areas that you can use on that if you want a bit of detail, or if you want a nice broad area, or if you need to get into the round that we've got in here. Again, they would work really well. But these are dye pens. So this is actual dye. These are to match the CHROMA Craft wood dye. And each color matches the color of the actual dye itself. So dye pens, the same stuff. And this is from the CHROMA Craft camp, and this is the Nick Agar signature series. Okay, now we sell those as sets, so you can get loads of colors together, or you can get them in individuals. All right, all the links are below the video, so have a look. I've actually linked this set as opposed to the individuals, but from then on you can search for the individual pens. Okay, that's enough for that one. So let's just quickly take off the nibs. We'll say we're done with that. Well, I've put no finish on it, but I'll put a spray finish. So maybe a spray sealer first, sanding sealer. And I tend to go straight for the cellulose. If you spray it on, don't wipe it on, otherwise you'll wipe off all that ink. And then an acrylic sand lacquer on top, something like that. That will give us a nice finish. Or, of course, you can wait till that's fully cured and then put on top something like a friction polish. And I would avoid this area as much as possible. Just go down here with the friction polish because you are adding friction, like I say. Right, top and tail. I'm just going to take it down to close and then we'll sand off the remainder. So back to our skew and go down, just go a little bit faster. We've got quite a lot to do yet. There we are. So let me just clean those ends off. Got a little carving chisel here. Just gonna, oh, that doesn't really need cleaning off. We'll just take a bit of abrasive to that. And this one, just watch your fingers. All right. Don't be in a position where you're doing that with one hand and that with the other, so they're separate from each other. Otherwise, that one will slip right into that one. So lock them together and you're pairing. You're not pushing. and that will just come away. So we want the chisel in control all of the time. There we go. Bit of, I would go 240, 400. You know what you're going to do there. Same on the back. You know what you're going to do. You don't need me to show you how to do that, but literally just tidy up those areas. So there we are. We've got 2 handles. You can see there's a slight color difference there, only because this one's got a finish on it now, and that one's just bare timber still. All right. Okay, so onwards, we're going to move on now to this section. So this is the actual spinner itself. So we've got a lot of texturing and color going on there as well. The actual top of this spinner is a separate piece of dowel. We'll look at making that in a second. So we're going to start another bit of lime. Do need to have a different drive center. That tailstock, that drive center that we've got there at the moment, the friction drive, this isn't good enough to do the job on that size of timber. It just won't turn it. So we're going to go, I've got choices, too many choices. Let's go 6-prong drive. I'd use this, my out of choice 6-prong drive or pro drive, whichever. Either one of those I'm happy to use. In fact, let's go put the pro in. I've put a little center point in as well. So we're just going to run down to cylinder, and then I'm going to work off the OD jaws, the OD 112s. And I'll show you why. For this project, it's ideal. I scratched my head a little bit. When I saw the actual spinning top down in Spain, I thought, well, how do they hold that? Because it's a really tricky bit to hold. You think about it, that as a piece, where do you hold it? You've got to decorate the whole of the outside edge and things like that. So I did scratch my head for a little bit, I'm honest, but I've got a solution I hope you can work with. So roughing gouge, too big for a skew. Well, it's not too big for a skew, but you're going to have more issues and more problems and more catches if you try and do that short section that's so big in diameter. Shall I move that camera, Steph, while I'm answering
that's what I was going to suggest. I was going to ask if you could just jiggle the camera a bit there.
I'll just do, and I'm doing all sorts of things now. Come out of the way. There we go. Bit better.
Thank you.
See, no fancy remote controls here.
What's the size of your block?
The block, well done. I think it's 75 by 75. Let's just have a double check. So we are lengthwise, no, we're 85 length and about 18 millimeters wide. So just over 3 inches wide by through just under, well, 3 3/8 long. Down to a cylinder first. There we are, that's round. So we'll just clean up that top edge. And we're going to use the OD 112s, like I've mentioned. I'm just going to put them in shot. Those are the jaws. I've used these quite a lot on several projects, but I want to use this for a particular reason. It has quite a good, sharp dovetail jaw on the internal. That's what we're going to use to hold the spinning top with in a minute. So I've already measured a foot. So let's just clean up the underside, and then we'll cut that foot in. So just making a nice dovetail there. Okay. So we're talking repeating the projects, doing several of these at one time. We always do that. If you're into selling your work or giving it away, then you want to do several at a time. So that's your blank you want to create with a hole point in whatever batch numbers you want to do. Then we can change the lathe over and put a chuck on. Chuck with the O'Donnell jaws. There we are. And now we've got a good hole point, so that can go in there. And why don't we use the tailstock as it's here, and it won't get in our way to start with. We'll need to move it before too long, though. Yes, there.
Frederick's offering if you need a language translator for when you're in America, because he's free, but by all accounts.
Okay.
I think everybody just wants to come with you. Yeah.
Should be fun, Frederick. Should be fun.
Woodworkland is saying that he will translate Frederick.
Right then, shaping. I'm just gonna, because there's a little bit of shadow going on there, so I know we've cleaned it up with a skew already. But let me just do a quick skew coat with a bowl gouge. Then we'll make the main shape. Okay, so that's where we are with this piece. That's the way round it is. So now we can take the tailstock out of the way. Now you've got a compromise to make here. Think about a spinning top is running on a very fine point. You make it really pointed, that point will just dull very quickly, especially if you drop it when you place it down to use it. So don't go too crazy when it comes to making a point. You can see it's relatively dull there. Now, one thing I will say, and I hope the camera can pick this up, I'm going to stop the lathe and show you how poor that finish is there. It's not the gouge's fault. It's not my fault. It's just the length of the bevel, the bowl gouge on that end grain. That can be improved either by tilting the bowl gouge over, resharpening the gouge, making sure you got as nice a finish as possible, or go into the spindle gouge. Spindle gouge will help you with that because that acts more like a skew, and you'll get those lovely angel hair shavings, and that's going to give them a really nice point there as well, and clean up that edge completely, makes it a different finish altogether. All right, it's not as strong as a bowl gouge. That's the only thing. It's a far wider flute to it, so you lose a lot of the metal above that flute, so it's not quite as strong, but you know, it does that job for us perfectly. Back to the bowl gouge. Just take out some of the waste, just so I know where this is going to stop, where this spinning top is going to stop. And looking at my other one, I reckon we're probably there. I think we're probably there. I want some weight to it. So that's fine. Happy with that. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to put another couple of those little grooves in, and then we'll sand. So let's put one there. I'm not going to go too deep. That's it. The next thing we'll sand that now, and then we're going to put a hole point in. So dust extraction on, starting with 150 grit. So notice that I'm sanding before I put too much detail in. Sanding is really quite effective, especially with this type of abrasive, the material backed. This is the Hermes 506, sorry. It'll take your detail out quite quick. So I'm going to put the detail in next and then just gently sand after that. Yeah. So 240. And then 400. Okay, so remember before I was talking to you about figuring out how to hold this. It really did baffle me for a little while. But what we're going to do now is use the fact that the dovetail on our chuck here is really quite fine, really quite sharp. And we're going to put a little V-cut in here, and that's going to be what we use to grip this piece when we reverse it around and take out this piece. It's going to be part of the decoration, part of the feature. Which I quite like. So I've got a set of dividers just set up here with the diameter that I need. So I'm going to carefully scribe that in. So just gently to start with, that's about right. So I've just got a very faint line there. Now with the skew, let me just take the tailstock out the way just briefly. With the skew, I'll just cut that little dovetail in. I don't want to make it a big, a big dovetail, just enough to grip. It's got to look like decoration, not a hole point. There we are. And to disguise that, we can then put a few more lines around it. And we're certainly going to put some texturing around it as well. Right, now to our fun bit again. Let's start with some texturing. Lower the speed slightly, remember. So we'll start with our decorating elf inside those little curves. Go with the finer one now. Right depth, right angle. That was just a case of bringing my handle further around to get that rotation going. See what we've got. Oh, look, like that. That's really nice. Okay, so a little bit of wire brushing. A little bit of very fine abrasive. All I'm doing is taking the fluff away. sometimes you can have quite happy accidents when you're doing this. What I mean, I don't mean dangerous accidents. I mean accidents that have made something that you weren't quite aware they were going to. And in this case, where I didn't get that wheel moving to start with, it's created 3 little lines, which are now dragging through the other texture, and it's worked out quite well. I'd never be able to repeat that, but it's a lovely happy accident. And let's fill in everything, and then we can take stuff away with the wedges if we want to. Really just get it in all those places. And I'll pop that to one side, bit of clean rag. Really nice. Let's go with our color again. So Lazenby's got to be a little bit slower. The pens don't like going, even Sharpies don't like going over a surface that's moving too quick. They skip over it more. So give it a chance. What color have we got here? We got that brown again. I think brown wants to go down here. There's a couple of little lines that I put in there. I'm going to try and burn those in a minute. So this is a lucky dip of color. So this is indigo. Wow. I said wow because it's quite vibrant. I've been back at school. Right, one more. Blood red.
What a combination. I feel like you need 4 colours on the bottom bit though.
Okay. Look at that, red, white, and blue almost. Have a quick check. Let's look. That's holding that. Those we need something here, don't we?
Yeah.
Had indigo already. Cobalt's too close to indigo. Melon.
Why not just chuck a bit of green in there as well?
We'll hold off any more. Stop and have a look. I like that. And then you can spray a sealer over the top if you want to, or you need to. But that's that front done. We're going to reverse it around now. Yes, Steph has a question.
I have a few questions. Okay, so firstly, is there any particular reason for using liming wax?
Over
anything else?
Just because it gives me the color that I want, that nice white finish. I suppose in the old days, what did they used to use it as whitewash and then sand off the whitewash to pick the grain out. So whatever you get that effect with, go for it. Absolutely. Right, I'm going to use the tailstock again. Oh, sorry, Steph. I was just carrying on.
Yet.
Oh, sorry.
Oh. Does the liming wax get on the pen tip and make them, in Maria's wording, ickified?
Ickified. I get what you're saying, Maria. No, not really. It will do if you don't dry it off properly first. And I'm rushing through it. Give it a bit of time to dry off. I mean, it's surprisingly quick to dry that liming wax. But wipe it off thoroughly, off the high spots thoroughly, and maybe give it 20 minutes at home. All right.
And not linked to wood turning at all, but Maria asked earlier if there'll be any more routing video sessions. She has loads of router projects to do and a few questions on methods and cutters.
Please, Maria, can you send those questions in, because that will give us the basis of a video, a stream. And Ben's keen. Yeah, absolutely. Just keep the questions coming in and we'll get something going.
I'll pop the email address in the chat just for anybody that doesn't have it, but we are planning our schedule for July next week, so send in your ideas and questions.
Spot on.
Thank you.
Right, we're going to take the waste away whilst I've got support, because remember when we created that little dovetail, we only made it little. It's only a small one. It's in a fairly soft material as well, this lime. Gonna use the spindle just to clean that surface. There we are. So what we'll do now is just going to create a little countersink, really, because we're going to drill a hole in this in a minute. So just with a tip of a skew. Yes, Steph?
Just not necessarily such a question, but Edinator 2000 has said, should I email the bow drill idea? So yes, please do send it in to us in the email. I've made a note of it, but we'll add it to the spreadsheet as well. And apparently ickified is a word, according to Susie Dent, which I'm really happy to know. I'm going to see Susie Dent in her show in a couple of weeks. So
I'll say hello from me. Susie Dent is one of my massive crushes. My out of touch crushes.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
Oh, intelligent woman, see. All right then. 150. Just going to tidy that surface up. Right, you've seen me do enough texturing now. I'm going to, because the time is ticking away, I'm not going to texture this. We're just going to put our finish on. So let's just say we want to use a finish, so I'm going to go with a bit of friction polish, or wood turner's polish. And then we're going to drill a hole ready to take our 10 mil dowel. Okay, that's going to make the little. Well, I'm going to make a word up now. It's going to make a little twiddle thing that twiddles the spinner. Yes.
Okay. So Don is asking, what is the finished dimensions of the top itself? Maybe we'll measure it in a minute when you're finished.
Yeah, what I ended up with, well, I can measure this one. I can measure that one across now. So I ended up with there. Now, we started off with 80 mil, didn't we, across? So we're actually taking a fair bit away. It's 75 now, look. And the depth of this one, finished, as an estimate, is about 60. Okay, so 60 mil in its depth.
Perfect. And Ruby is asking, what is the finished diameter of the shaft?
So the bit that's going in here is 10 mil. So this the little bit of dowel, but this bit here, we're looking the widest dimension on that. 32. Yes.
Perfect. And Michael has just received his lathe, and he doesn't have a chuck as of yet. Will we be doing any chuck projects?
Loads. Like pretty much everything I do, Michael, is using a chuck. With the exception next week, we're going to do some spindle work for Tool Technique. But pretty much every project we do can, or in a lot of cases does, use a chuck. Not just about bowls, but this sort of project, you know. So yeah, stick with it. There's going to be loads coming. So I'm going to go into about 25 mil, about an inch in depth. Or maybe a bit more, a little bit further than that, but as long as I didn't go through. There we are. So that was the 10 mil drill for our 10 mil dowel. Oh, I need to cut this off, and I haven't cut it off yet.
Sorry, it was my mistake. I read it wrong. Michael meant chuckless projects, not chuck projects.
Of course, we're going to do lots.
Sorry, my mistake, Michael.
If you... so yes, things like we can do. So things like so wooden fruit is a really well known one. We can make wooden fruit without the use of a chuck, because you use wooden jam chucks instead, and they can be used mounting them on a faceplate, for instance. So friction chucks and friction jam chucks, look into those especially. So again, search jam chucks on YouTube, and you'll come up with lots of projects. In terms of where they're used, you'll see certainly on my streams that we use jam chucks fairly frequently. I've used some for making a little bird box, hanging decorations, fruit making, those sorts of things. Even this little pull string for this project here, this was done using a little jam chuck. So the top was turned just by putting that onto a jam, a tapered piece of timber to turn the top off. So yeah, it's all doable and all can be done. It's how I learned as an apprentice, was on jam chucks. We didn't have other chucks available to us. There we are. So that's a nice rip. I'm just gonna.
We do have previous woodworking wisdoms on how to turn apples and things like that, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Should be able to go back and view them.
Let me just take that off for 5 seconds. I just want to pour a little bit of glue in there, and then we'll put the handle on and finish the top, and then we might be able to get this spinning for you. All right, I'm going to do this rather than put it on the actual stem itself. I'm going to put it into the piece. Otherwise, I'll get glue everywhere. Be right with you, Steph. 2 seconds. That's not too bad. What I would have done, if that was out of true, use that chuck there to drive it on and make it nice and straight. But if you drill a nice accurate hole on the lathe, really there's not a lot that can be out, if you know what I mean. So that's held in there nice and secure. Yes, Steph.
So my question, well, not my question, but Artful Bodger's question is, do all drill bits find the centre if they're introduced gently to a workpiece?
No, they don't. It's a real issue. Twist drill bits will follow the grain quite quickly. Lip and spur or brad point bits are the ones I tend to go for, but only then if you don't make a countersink. If you make a countersink, generally that's going to be for a regular twist drill bit. But no, twist drills are the worst. Lip and spur then Then things like sawtooth, force bits, they'll follow end grain quite nicely. The type of timber you use is also a big factor. So anything with a strong grain, drill bits will follow it. So if you're doing a standard lamp, for instance, try and pick something with a neutral grain. And what I mean by that is something like sapele, something like lime. You know, those timbers that you don't see strong annual rings in. Those are the best ones to do. Yeah.
I did miss a question earlier, and Jenny's kind of reminded me of it here. She said, when you turn the top, could you not make the handle from the same piece of wood instead of using a separate piece of dowel? And Frederick asked earlier, could you not turn it as a whole piece and then use I can't remember what he said. I will find it.
Yes and yes. This is the beauty of doing what we do. You can pretty much do it in so many different ways. This is my interpretation and how I've done it. But yeah, absolutely. Go on, sir.
He said use a collet chuck. That's it.
A collet chuck.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, you can. Absolutely. What I'm doing here, you can see that. So I'm just making that little mark where I want to drill my hole to put the string through. So that's there. I haven't sanded anything yet because I know that I'm going to get a little bit of breakout. You could do the hole or dry fit, then do the hole on a pillar drill with a piece of backing wood if you wish. All right, but I'm just going to be careful. So I've got a little hole there. If you followed my advice, which I'm not doing, and use a lip and spur, that would be better. So nice and gentle, don't push too hard. And then there will be a little bit of breakout there. So a little bit of abrasive. Before you do the main sand, you just sand with the grain just to stop that breakout as much as possible. There we are. Now all I'm going to do, I just want to tidy up this top end, a couple of lines in, and then we'll sand that. Couple of lines. There we are. Now I want to sand that just for a little bit. It needs to be nice and smooth. Dust extraction on. Starting at 150 grit. Again. Just get that nice and clean. Be careful not to touch the top section. 240. Let's go with a little bit of friction polish. And then there we are. That's one. That because that was such a good fit in there. It doesn't really matter that the glue's not dry at the moment. It held itself. We're going to test this one in a minute. Yes.
Sorry, Edinator's asked, would beech respond well to drilling for a 12-inch lamp, for example?
You should be okay. Yeah. So you're going to come in from both sides. And then use a bore, a long hole bore. But I would certainly do a countersink first. But yeah, between centers and the long hole boring system, you should have no problem. Make sure you clear the swarf regularly for that though. So you're going to go in just a couple of inches, bring it out, clear the swarf, another couple of inches, and so on. The piece will go off if you stop clearing the swarf out of the way because it can't go anywhere and it's horrible. So yeah, clear the swarf regular.
Stuart asks, could you put tape on to stop the breakout when drilling?
Yeah, definitely. That would help massively.
And Jenny has asked, what is a collet chuck?
Collet chuck is one chuck. You have lots of different what we call collets. Collets are split pieces of metal with different diameter internals. So you can put a specific size in, say a 25 mil piece of dowel in a 25 mil collet chuck. You get about 1 millimeter of movement, but they're known to be a very accurate chuck. You see a lot of them in engineering, but we do a collet chuck for woodworkers, especially good for people doing miniatures and things like that. It's called the junior, isn't it? Is it junior?
The junior chuck.
Yes.
Yeah.
Till I don't use it that often. And the only reason I don't use it often because it's not my style of turning. I'm into the slightly bigger projects, and these guys do it for me. Really, I want to just play with a spinning top. Now I haven't turned the little knob, but you guys know what you're doing exactly when it comes to turning that. It was literally on this one. It was a little acorn sort of shape, but in two parts. That's too much work. We don't need to do that. Just do a little light pull. That's all you need to do. You don't need to make a two-part piece to house a knot. Just like I say, a little light pull is absolutely fine. Now I'm actually going to use that one for this. So we'll start. This is where things go all over the floor. Let's do the one we've made today.
Can you rejiggle it to the side of it towards the chuck?
I can barely see what I'm doing at the moment. Yeah, of course I will. No. It's like threading the eye of a hook. I haven't been able to do that for a few years either. There we are. Then we're just going to start the twist without too much pressure on it. And wind it up. Fingers crossed, Steph, and I've gone and done that left-handed. Fingers crossed.
Let's hope it works.
Ooh. Oh, we can't see it on the big screen, on the small camera. I'll do it again in a minute. He's working, everybody.
Arthur Bodgers asked if you could. What about making a whistling top? I'm not sure what that is.
I get the concept. I wouldn't know how to do it though at this stage. That's the only thing. Let's get the other one going as well. That's standing up right now. It's there's no camera trickery there. It's definitely working. So I'm chuffed at that. There's always a little bit of doubt in my mind. You know, it's almost. I don't want to get back to the days of the weeble wobble, but you never know. Things could go awry. But that's worked well. Let's do one more as that one winds down. Proper old wooden toys. We have them both spinning. So there we are, everybody. Well done, Steph. Thank you. They got some lights. That one's about to fall over. Right, there we are. Let's just end with those two handles there. And we'll stop him for the minute. Thank you. Thanks for that camera. Moving, Steph. So there we are, everybody. Have we done our questions for today?
I think we have.
We're okay.
If there are any more for next week,
hang them over.
Send them through.
A little bit longer than normal, so I apologize for that, everybody, but I hope you enjoyed that. That's something a little bit different, and a little bit of inspiration from sunny Spain, like I said, that I saw in the last trip. So if you like what you see, and I'm going to say it every single time, give us a thumbs up. You know the routine by now, and share and subscribe, of course. Until next time, I can't wait till next week. Me and Ben working together on these questions. So thanks for joining us, and see you next time. Bye bye.